Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Town Experience Live. We're all about AI these days, and so is our partner, SAP. It's a hot topic, but a contentious one. And while there's a lot of buzz about the benefits, there's also a lot of concerns about the implications. Let's join Devin as he chats with Robert Richardson, SAP SuccessFactors HR Tech Strategy Advisor, about the ups and downs of the AI roller coaster. Enjoy the ride.
Welcome to the program, Talent Experience Live. Very excited to have you here, Robert. I know we have on a buzzworthy topic today. Today we're talking beyond the buzz, AI trends with SAP SuccessFactors. But before we get into that, being that this is an HR technology show, it deals with the HR. I oftentimes chat with folks who never had aspirations, believe it or not, to end up in the HR field. So there's very few of the first day of kindergarten signs that say, when I grow up, I want to work in HR tech. So I'd love to hear your story and how you got started in the industry.
Well, just like everybody, when that it was an accident, you end up in HR by accident. I guess in part on purpose, in part by accident. So I started my background in college studying industrial organizational psychology. And I guess I pursued it for no reason other than I was kind of obsessed. I absolutely loved psychology. And while some of my friends were interested in things like abnormal psychology and that kind of thing, I was really more interested in figuring out how can we maximize potential? You know what I mean? How can we use psychology to maximize human potential across society? And so that's really why I got so very into industrial organizational psychology. And then, I decided I want to get married. And, I wanted to move on with my life and had kids and that sort of thing. And so rather than pursue a full doctorate, I graduated having done the first year of the doctoral program. And I looked around and tried to find jobs. And it turned out nobody cared that you have a psychology degree, And so it was a real challenge to land that first position. And I lucked out. With a really fabulous technology company called Jobs to Web. And so that was one of my very first jobs out of college. Jobs to Web. Doug Berg was the founder of Jobs to Web. And so that team, Ken Hollick and Peter Braskett, all took a risk on me and hired me in a recruiting marketing software company.
Okay. Yeah, no, a risk worth taking. It sounds like
I hope so.
things have turned out well. And it fascinates me with the psychology, but behind business. Reminds me of Ted Lasso a little bit, where I think in the latest season they hire the
psychologist. I'll take that as a compliment. Yes,
absolutely, and I think it's important. And then speaking of which, you mentioned your degree. Almost a segue into the skills conversation that seems to be taking over the industry now, where you're taking all of the things that you've learned and applying it to a different industry and not matching job title for job title. But that is a conversation for a different day, right?
Oh, but it's such a fascinating conversation. Why is it not a conversation for today? It's absolutely true. Yeah. Well, I'm just teasing in part, but it is interesting that we constantly plague candidates with this concept that if you don't have experience, we can't hire you for the experience you're, supposed to have on the job. That our resumes need to contain 5 years of background in a position to do the position, so when in fact people come with all kinds of skills behind them, and the challenge that we faced as employers is assessing whether or not the skill is going to make you good at whatever position, you might be applying for in the future. But, we have this concept that past performance equals future performance, but that only applies to people who have the past performance to show, right, and document it. You know what I mean? And so, what if we could get at skills and things like that instead of experience? Do you have 5 years of experience, or do you have the skills necessary to do the job? Is a perfectly legitimate question.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I still have LinkedIn notifications set up for social media jobs, and they come through and it's like 15 years of experience in social media. Robert, at that point, Facebook still required you to have a university ID login. Like no one's been
Yes.
marketing
Yes.
in that, field for that long.
Yep.
But
I,
it's
I
it's
remember
it's
the
fascinating.
days. I remember the
Yeah.
days. When did millennials become
And
old?
exactly. Uh, but moving, right along, we'll get into skills a little bit as well.
Sure.
Obviously, you're now with SAP SuccessFactors. What is your current role right now? It sounds like you talk a little bit about skills from time to time, but what does that consist of for you at this moment?
Sure. So, in working for Jobs to Web, a recruiting marketing startup, it was December of 2011. SAP SuccessFactors. Believe it or not, it was on the same day that it was announced that SAP was acquiring SuccessFactors. So we were a double acquisition. We got acquired by SuccessFactors again on the same day that SAP announced its intention to acquire SuccessFactors. So it was a very interesting ride. In post acquisition, I have spent most of my years here as an advisor. So, my title is a strategy advisor. I work inside of our center of excellence. And I always tease that title means everything and nothing at the same time. And so I explain to people what I actually do for a living. And so my day to day consists of working with three primary stakeholders across three primary domains. And so the first tend to be our customers. So I work with about 100 customers per year. I work with our internal stakeholders, and I work with our partner community, all in support of three domains being recruiting, talent management, and artificial intelligence. And so I advise all of those stakeholders on those three topics.
Yeah, and I'm sure that one of the hottest topics with those three stakeholders right now has to be artificial intelligence, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And it is fascinating to see how the narrative has changed, right? From 6 months ago to even where it's headed right now. I think either last week or the week before, it might have been last week, litigation out in California or rules and regulations in California vetoed
Yeah.
by Governor Gavin Newsom because it wasn't quite ready. The conversation keeps changing. When you are discussing this with those three key stakeholders, what are people really concerned about? Is it turning on the technology and having all of their quote unquote challenges removed? Is it understanding the technology right now, or where it will be in 6 months, 5 years, 10 years from
Yeah.
now, kind of future talk?
Yeah. It's all of the above, right? I hate to say it, but you have varying levels of knowledge in the artificial intelligence domain. And so you have organizations that are still trying to figure out exactly what this is and why it's different than what we had heard about in years past. And then you have other organizations I work with that are just even blowing us away, right? And asking questions that you just don't hear every day, even as an AI professional. So the gamut of knowledge is quite wide. The gap in competencies is quite wide, and that means that the concerns are varying across that domain of knowledge, right? If you're just coming in, you might be concerned with what is this and is it, and what kind of ethics questions should I be asking around this, right? Ethics come up a lot in AI. If you're very advanced, you're more concerned with exactly how do the tools work? Are they secure? And you might be past the ethics question, but now we're talking about AI safety, and concerns like that.
It's interesting how much it has evolved, because ethics is, I think, even when we were talking about AI 2-3 years ago, we began to have that kind of
Yeah.
conversation specifically around fit score, around candidate ranking, those sort of things. Rarely was there an ethical question on filling out a resume or uploading your resume to an applicant tracking system for personalization purposes, right? To help people cross the finish line. Now we've entered this world where recruiters and talent acquisition teams, I think alike, are beginning to offload their manual tasks, right? That's what every person at HR Tech said last week was, let's get rid of the busy work so you can build the human conversations. But that's where you get into the nitty gritty, right? That's where the ethical questions come into play. And I think bringing up data safety is also hugely important, because I think if you create roadblocks for talent acquisition teams, right, where they understand that generative AI and AI tools exist, but you don't create those guardrails for them, they're going to go externally, right? And then your data is no longer safe. Is that really the type of conversations that are most prevalent now when you talk about that wide range? Have people gained the understanding of, all right, this can help me in my day-to-day. Let's make sure that I use it correctly. And that makes sense? Am I way off there?
Yeah, no, I think it does make sense. I think it is part of the question. You know, in a lot of ways, you know, again, I think we're evolving. You know, some organizations are using it to an extent already, some are not. You know, like a lot of the conversations that I'm having with customers, again, they have evolved. You know, so if we look at November of 2022, ChatGPT made its debut, and that was sort of the year of WTF. You know, and of course, WTF stands for what's a transformer, right? So we were all trying to figure out what is this thing, and nobody expected AI to pass the Turing test in 2022. You know, but in fact, in some ways, it'll pass the Turing test better than a human sometimes, right? 2023 and 2024, I like to say, are the years of experimentation and implementation. You know, and so organizations are seeing technology companies like ours come out with innovative tools that they can now explore, or you can go straight to the large language models and explore those as well. I think 2025, just as a prediction, will be the year of fine tuning, but I don't necessarily mean that from a technology standpoint. There's fine tuning in your business process that needs to take place, if that makes sense. And oftentimes that's slower, you know what I mean, than the fine tuning that takes place in an AI model. And so organizations are adopting this stuff now because we have real things in place. To kind of get at your earlier question, you know, we have real tools in place today that you can use, but now they need to adjust. Organizations need to adjust to these tools and really figure out how to use them efficiently. So, you know, 2025, 2026 will really be the years of serious productivity gain. And by 2027, we'll all be saying, you know, this is like your cell phone. You know, I can't even imagine anymore how we got along without a cell phone in the past, and AI is going to be the same way, you know. So so the adoption curve varies by organization along that path, and whether you are considering use cases or security or ethics really varies along each organization's kind of competency curve along that path, you know, and how much they understand about this market.
Yeah, and I think it's probably very synonymous with most technology adoption, right? I think back to GPS, right? Game changing when it came to, you know, driving, especially cross country, right? You no longer had to print out, well, even before that, the giant maps. Then you'd print out MapQuest, and if you missed a turn, you'd turn back around. Then you had the separate devices, right? And I think that brings us back to kind of 2022 with ChatGPT, where you had the external GPS on your dashboard that you'd plug it in. All of a sudden now we're into that integration stage where it's built within your car, within your vehicle, right? And you have, I think, at least some semblance of, or some idea that it is secure in that sense, right? Because it is manufactured, hopefully, right? Maybe overstepping there. But I really like that idea of now being the experimental time, right? Because I am seeing a lot of generative AI images online, right? To promote events, whether they be hiring, whether they be, and it's like, it kind of feels weird, right? Things are spelled wrong. I can tell that this was generated, but now you know, we're getting closer. I'm even seeing it on, you know, LinkedIn and things like that, where I see a very long post with 30,000 hashtags at the bottom. And I'm like, I know that they used some artificial intelligence on this post.
You did not think of
You're
all
not
those
tricking me.
hashtags.
But when we come to the fine tuning stage, I think you're spot on, because you have to have that experimental. You have to play around with the tool before you truly find out where it fits in your day to day, right? How you are going to use it as process, and also where it's effective, right?
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see that right now it's almost try and break it, right, to an extent, see if it works for you and what works, and then make that a part of your daily routine in order to become more efficient and
Yeah.
effective.
But it will, I mean, because to your point, GPS, right? At one point in time was new. Now we use it every day. Email spam filtering is an AI that's used every single day, and we completely take it for granted.
Yeah.
Netflix, right? And its recommendation engine. Like, what would I do without it? I would have completely missed out on The Walking Dead. I mean, so like we use this stuff every single day without thinking about it. And now with generative AI, I think it is incredibly new. It's incredibly novel. But in some ways, we'll sort of know that this thing was really successful when we cease to be so surprised and excited about it.
Yeah.
And I say that as a person who spends a lot of time in AI being surprised and impressed by it. You know what I mean? But at some point in time, you notice I have 3 domains right now. It's recruiting, talent management, and artificial intelligence. Someday, I suspect I'll go back to 2. You know what I mean? Because it'll just be expected that AI is inherent in the way that we do recruiting and talent management. It is only because it is so new, it is so novel, and we are pursuing interesting use cases so rapidly right now that in some ways this has to be its own domain within places like HR.
Yeah.
But eventually just go back to being HR.
Yeah, no, it will. It'll be ingrained in it, just like our morning commute, where I know how to get to work, Robert.
Right.
I don't need directions, but I want to avoid traffic, the path of least
Yeah.
resistance. Right?
Or try and give me directions, right? My brain immediately, I can't even listen anymore,
No.
right? Turn left where? I don't know. Look, I'm
Yeah.
just going to push the button anyway.
And if I miss the turn, it'll get me there. I'll find a way. I'm not going to
That's
stop
right.
traffic. With all of this, and it's almost seemed more palatable, I think, for organizations. We've had conversations here at Phenom where you can't even mention, AI to certain companies because it's taboo right now, because they're still in that world of we don't understand it yet, we can't roll it out. Are, in your conversations, without getting into specifics, are people beginning to say, okay, it's either we join this or we maybe 10 years down the line cease to exist, right? Because it does speed up processes. Have we seen that shift from leadership where it's like, all right, let's start to experiment with some of these tools before we're left behind in 2025 where we're fine tuning?
Yeah, interesting question. I think for sure there is varying levels of readiness to adopt in the industry right now. And I see sort of the full gamut, right? Again, just working with 100 different hiring companies per year, you kind of see everything, and so without naming names, I have one organization I spoke to at HR Tech that I feel like is running circles around us right now. The use cases, oh my gosh, that they want to pursue are absolutely inspiring. There's just no other word for it. It is fascinating. And then you have other organizations, like in the same conference, I talked to one person and he very confidently said, well, we shut all that down. Our employees, you can't even access GPT on their machine, and I was like, well, did you shut it down on their cell phone? And did you shut it down on their personal computer? Right. Because I talked to a VP of talent acquisition not that long ago, and her company had done the same thing. They decided that they were going to ban the use of AI inside the company, and so they shut it down from an IT perspective. And so now she just goes out to her cell phone and hops on GPT and says, "Write me a job requisition for XYZ." She copies it out of GPT, she pastes it into her email, and she sends it to herself. Right.
Yeah.
And into her applicant tracking system, and boom, there's the job, right?
Yeah.
So, I have a saying in this industry, and that is, do it or it will be done unto you. And that story kind of emphasizes that challenge that we're all facing. You cannot put your head in the sand on this topic, because you cease to see all the ways, that this could actually cause harm. If you do that, you have to find safe ways to adopt these tools that don't involve everybody going out to their device, using it in whatever unsafe way they see fit, and then just pasting the results into your system because you put up a roadblock. It's going to happen.
If anything, humans are resilient, right? They will find a way.
They'll find a way.
It makes me think of I'm sure you've seen the pictures, this beautiful sidewalks, right? And there is a shortcut that cuts right through a beautiful lawn. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're building pavers there, right? Like, if you are going to create that roadblock, they're going to go through the point of least resistance. And
what a great example.
It has to be challenging, I would imagine, in some of these meetings for talent acquisition recruiters where it has been shut down on their machines. However, one recruiter begins to outperform others because they're able to write job descriptions. I imagine following up on an interview with a candidate where they mention, I'm a huge fan of Stephen King, and you pop into GPT, hey, can you write a follow-up message for this particular role, as if it was a Stephen King novel?
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Interesting. Why not?
You're going to start to see this creativity and this stuff that, yes, you're hitting the main points, but you can reach out and connect with candidates in a far faster way. And then you're in a meeting and you're like, well, why do you have, 15 new hires? What are you doing differently? Like, well, I use ChatGPT on my phone. Don't tell my bosses. But
it personalizes the experience in a way that we can't scale as individuals. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a reflection of us, and people who are creative but may not have the tools to do it can start to create simultaneously, whether it's images, letters, writing, the whole nine. I do want to ask you, though, the other kind of, I don't want to call it the dark side of AI. That sounds very easy, but the pushback of it has been, it's going to take jobs, right? Do we think we've come to level heads and said, you know what, it may replace, and I've heard this before, it may replace someone who doesn't use artificial intelligence throughout their day-to-day, but I think gone are the concerns that you can fire your entire recruitment staff and only have one recruiter, right, to manage 50 requisitions or whatever it may be.
Yeah. That's a little bit of a tough one, to be really candid, because I don't want to pretend. I do think that there are going to be job losses as a result of AI. Sometimes I ask how much more efficient AI is going to make us, right? There's a cynical way to look at this, and that is, if AI makes us 10% efficient, then can you cut 10% of your workforce? And it's a legitimate question. The challenge, I think, in the marketplace today, like specific for recruiters, so would we lay off all of our recruiting staff across these organizations, as an example? In those cases, most organizations, and there's a difference between the near-term answer and the long-term example, right? The long-term answer. In the near term, I think organizations have already cut their staff to the bone. In most cases, right? Most organizations that I talk to, like those recruiters, they're overwhelmed. There's more to do than there is time in the day to do it, And so those people, what is nice is we are removing parts of their job that most people hate. You know what I mean? So like sometimes I think of Steve Hunt, by the way, every time I talk about this. Repetitive stress injuries, we all know what those are, right? Repetitive motion injuries, like on a factory floor. There's something analogous to that, and that is like the repetitive psychological injury. And so if we talk about recruiting as a very, nobody cares if you typed out your 51st job requisition. Right? Yeah. It is a thankless job that recruiters engage in all the time. And they typically don't love it. It's not like it's creative work. It's legalistic. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's repetitive. And so if you could have AI do something like create a job requisition for you, you would get time back in your day to do the things that the organization does thank you for. You know what I mean? And that would be actually talking to a candidate, inspiring them about your value proposition. You know, those kind of activities that you know that you're valued for. And so I think in the short term, there are all kinds of ways that these tools are going to add value to our day-to-day lives. You know, they're going to ease the burden of repetitious tasks that we don't want to engage in, thankless tasks that we don't want to engage in. But there is potential for long term, you know, for people to be impacted, and I don't think it'll all be in recruiting, right? I don't think we're going to wholesale, you know, lay off 50% of all recruiting jobs. But
Yeah.
I'll give you one job I do think that is ripe to happen in, and sort of in the short term. You know, we're talking in the next, you know, within the next couple of years. I think if you are in a job that people don't want to interact with you, right? So think about telemarketers, think about call center jobs. All that knowledge is well documented in the systems, right? There's all the help files that they are using to help you anyway. Um, Nobody looks forward to calling a call center, right? And so, you know, those types of positions with AI that can literally talk on the phone as
Mhm.
articulately as you or I, has access to all the same knowledge and data, you know, the databases that those people were using anyway to answer questions. I do think we'll probably see wholesale cuts, you know, and maybe upwards of 50% of people losing those kind of positions. But if you have a human to human interaction, there is value there that, Devin, you don't want from a bot sometimes, right? If you know, and I'm sorry to get a little long-winded on this, but to
No,
emphasize
no,
the
no. I'm
point,
enjoying it.
recruiters are kind of like salespeople, right? Except salespeople sell products and recruiters sell
Mhm.
life changes. Okay. And the bot will never really care about you, but the recruiter will empathize, right? And help guide you through perhaps your next career change in a way that changes your life, you know. And so that's the kind of personal connection that a human can provide that a bot can't. And so while the role may change and we may see some impact, you know, I think recruiting is an area where we won't see, you know, 90% right drops, and you know, in that sort of terrifying, those sort of terrifying numbers.
Yeah, I mean, and it's happened with technology, right? I big fan of the show Mad Men, and you have switchboard operators, right? Where, hey, can
Sure.
I talk to Don Draper? And if somebody
Yep.
switched through that now, that's
And
automated,
imagine
right?
their
To an extent.
shoulders, right? They probably had repetitive stress shoulder injuries.
And their lungs, they smoked like chimneys back then,
Fair enough.
but neither here nor there. And when we're talking about recruiting, I had this conversation with Cliff Jerkowitz a couple weeks ago. You know, you can maybe a talent marketer or sourcer no longer goes out and finds resumes, right? They can become the
Yeah,
talent greeter
that's another one. You're
that,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
that meets someone at the door, where that human interaction can take you a step above, right? Especially you picture these large office buildings. It's tough to find someplace. Hey, I'll be right out front here. I'll walk you through. We'll get you a parking spot. That is, I think, a life-changing experience where you're now excited, right? I've always used the analogy: sales sells software, they sell products, recruiters sell jobs. But you're 100% right. They do sell life changes. And in the same way, where you're not going to interact with a bot for a mortgage per se, you're going to sit down with a banker, is the
Yeah.
same way that you should approach recruiting. You can fill out the paperwork beforehand, automated, but at some point you're going to want to talk face to face with somebody.
Yeah.
Same thing with, I think, where you were getting at call centers, right? I've had trouble with my Apple phone before. I
Yep.
prefer to go into the Apple store and talk to one of their geniuses than
Sure.
walk through troubleshooting online.
Oh my God, and the
So
dial tree. You know what I mean? Just to get to the person, right? And
Mhm.
and yeah,
Yeah.
you're desperate to get to the person that you don't want to talk to in the end. You
Yeah.
know?
Yes, exactly. And then they say they can't help you, and you're like, "Ah, now I
That's
got
right.
it."
And then
Oh,
they
my God.
escalate it and they move it up, right? And all of those, by the way, have tiers of knowledge. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so they're surfing through some kind of help center knowledge database, right? And the reason they kick it up is because they can't answer the question, and you get somebody, right? Imagine just all of that knowledge, all of that data being available to the AI. Now you call in, there's no such thing as a dial tree anymore. You just say what the problem is that you're having with your iPhone. Siri says, hey, I've got an LLM upgrade now, and so I can actually understand you and talk coherently. Sorry, Siri, I've never liked you. It's but she's about to get better, right? She's going to get an upgrade really soon, with ChatGPT being integrated, and she just starts answering your questions because she has all the knowledge and she's got a great LLM backing her up.
Well, we're getting off track here, but I have to say this piece here because it excites me. I saw the videos of ChatGPT now where it can do specific dialect, specific, colloquial terms,
and
which
understand your emotional tone.
Yes, it's
Yes.
fascinating. I mean, I imagine calling into customer service somebody from South Philadelphia saying John, right? If you talk to somebody in California, they're going to have no idea what that means. It's just the thing. They use it for everything here.
Wait, I'm sorry, saying what?
Yeah, JAWN, saying John.
What is
got
John?
A bunch of my coworkers say
it. I can't be the only person confused by this.
Everything. I've lived in Philadelphia for too long. I apologize. They use it for cell phones, for whatever it may be. But it's my point exactly is it could get lost in context when you're on the phone with somebody from customer success. But I can guarantee you, ChatGPT is probably listening to this conversation and is defining it in the future so that some of those things don't happen. And it excites you, right? We think about recruiting. I was challenged back in the day. I was based in Florida and I had to recruit in Seattle, Washington, and having some of those conversations that I didn't understand where things were located out there, right? How close it was in proximity to the Starbucks or to wherever it was. To have those conversations seamlessly is only going. I mean, it's just exciting. Overall, Robert.
Well, speaking of not knowing things, right? It is one of the greatest research tools ever created. Just on a side note, if you haven't done this yet, download the ChatGPT app, and on your next hour-long commute, don't turn on the radio or the podcast. Open up the ChatGPT chat interface, the conversational chat interface, and ask it a question about something you've been curious about for a while. You can literally spend the next hour of your life engaged in a interesting, informative conversation, learning about whatever topic you want. And if you don't know the topic very well, ask it to teach you like you're a high schooler. And it will adjust its teaching methodology to your knowledge set. So they're just absolutely fascinating ways to use these tools and to kind of bring it back, right? Same thing for recruiters. I used AI to teach me AI. You know what I mean? So, right. There is nothing outside. Knowledge has been democratized. The cost of AI means that this tool has been democratized. You have the cheapest employee you will ever hire under your belt at $20 a month right now on your phone.
Imagine the onboarding process that you can create with that, right? Like where you're bringing on a new hire and rather than saying, hey, go home, study, what these acronyms mean. It's hop onto our interface, our knowledge base, and have conversations about what our product does, about where we see it in the future. Perfect segue. I think what excites you about the future of HR tech, Robert?
All of this excites me. Imagine a learning tool, right? And we're getting there. Learning tools that instead of asking you to take an hour-long course, engage in an actual dialogue with you about the topic. You know what I mean? School systems are really, you design a school system to accommodate everybody all at once, right? 20 some accommodates nobody in a way, right? Because it's built for everyone. So learning is individualistic. We all think in different ways. And so just imagine these tools in the future, whether it's corporate or whether it's school, being able to adjust their teaching technique to your unique knowledge base as a human, right? And so that's really fascinating. Just because we're kind of touching on the topic as one item.
Yeah. You get to the point of actually gaining knowledge rather than studying for tests, right? For exams. It's now I am interacting with this. I don't need to just remember, E equals MC squared, right? For an example or something like that.
Right.
I don't know what that means. I know it does equal MC squared because it's drilled into my
Yeah.
mind, but I couldn't tell you what it means. So it's
Well,
exciting stuff.
that's one example I use on a regular basis. So, oftentimes when I'm teaching people about AI and I'll pull out the tools and start showing them, I'll ask GPT to teach me the theory of relativity like I'm a grade schooler, and people are just amazed at its ability to adjust its teaching, and its examples, right? Its analogies to something that they would understand. I asked it to teach similarity searches to my 8-year-old, right? And I asked it to start using Minecraft and just the different video games that he's into as a teaching strategy, and you should have seen it. He was engaged with this bot, right? Talking about AI and similarity searches and generative AI. It was really cool, and sort of touched on some of the math, even, you know what I mean, to help him understand. So it's just fascinating. But to bring it back, right? To bring it back to HR tech, one thing that really excites me is how we can combine these tools. So as an example, Phenom has been incredibly successful for a really long time in the recruiting marketing space. You guys were out there ahead of the curve, doing things like skills matching, skills ontologies, right? And so, imagine a future, right? And by the way, just on a side note, generative AI has simply cast a light on how incredible AI has already been for a very long time, right? So just on a side note, everyone, if you haven't looked into ontologies and skills matching, you've got to do your homework on this. This stuff was powerful before Gen AI, and companies like Phenom and other SAP partners were really doing incredible work on this front and changing the recruiting game years before generative AI became a thing. Now, imagine, right? In the near future, this can't even be that far off because maybe you're already doing this. The ability to say, "Hey Siri," no, I'm just kidding. We wouldn't ask Siri. Hey, I don't know why I love teasing Siri. She's gonna get good though. She's getting an LLM. She's getting an upgrade. But saying, "Hey, whatever your co-pilot is," right? Whether it's SAP's Joule, whether it is Microsoft's Copilot. I don't know if you have a Copilot, but you ask your Copilot, "Why does my time to fill, or why did my time to fill increase last month?" And the LLM goes out, it understands your intent, and it engages with machine learning techniques to understand your data and really produce a sophisticated result, right? Give you an answer that really answers the question. That would take a data analyst, a data scientist some time to sit there and analyze and understand, and these tools now, as they combine generative AI and its understanding of your intent with machine learning techniques to manage data, is going to make this a very, very fascinating field in the very near future. This is just around the corner.
Yeah. It's awesome. I'm excited. I've loved this conversation, Robert. Thank you so much for taking the time. And also thank you for the shout out. I'm the one that's supposed to pay the bills on here. Thank you for a little bit there. I want to. I know you're very busy. You meet with over 100 clients a year. I want to ask you before we hop off, any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Where can folks learn more about the Phenom SAP partnership? Any parting shots?
I guess to begin with, certainly individuals are welcome to reach out. So if you've got questions, I'm sure our social profiles are right down there. You can click on our links and and send us a DM, send us a message. We're certainly happy to help. And beyond that, I would just say keep learning. You know what I mean? There are so many tools out there today, that can help you understand this marketplace. So if you're watching this LinkedIn Live and and you feel like you skipped the AI revolution, it's an evolution, right? And there's absolutely time and interact, take some of the advice in this conversation, download, Anthropic or GPT, Perplexity is another awesome one. There's lots of these tools out there, and just ask it, what is skills matching? What is, ask it about any of these topics, and it'll provide you with really sophisticated answers, and you can start learning in that way. And then, it's game changing for organizations between machine learning and generative AI. So, the next best time is now, as they always say.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the time. I'd love to have you on in the future. Down the line once we've all learned
certainly
everything there is to know.
Well, we'll see if my
AI,
2025, 2026, 2027 predictions come true, right? You can
Yes,
you
we
can
have
hold
to
me
go back on
accountable and see what happens.
We'll check the receipts. But yes,
Awesome.
thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.